"You don't belong here!" Officer Mason Scott shouted at the young black twins, his voice dripping with contempt. His grip tightened around Jayden's arm, pulling him harshly toward the police car. Jordan, his twin sister, stood frozen, unable to comprehend what was happening. The scene was unfolding on a quiet street corner, under the harsh glow of streetlights, with the cold night air biting through their thin jackets. The twins had been walking home from their part-time job, chatting and laughing. They had no idea this would be the night that would change everything. Officer Scott, a man known in the neighborhood for his brash and often overbearing demeanor, had already approached them without cause. His suspicion seemed rooted in nothing more than the twins' appearance, their skin color, and the fact that they didn't fit in with the area. "What do you think you're doing?" Jayden said, pulling his arm back. "We haven't done anything." The officer ignored his words, his eyes narrowing. "You've been walking around here for hours, acting suspicious. Where do you think you're going?" The twins, used to racist encounters like this, tried to stay calm. They knew their rights. They knew they hadn't broken any laws. But tonight it wasn't about reason or rights. It was about something far more dangerous. Before they could respond, Officer Scott yanked Jayden's arm again, pulling him toward the squad car. "Get in the car!" he barked. Jayden stood his ground. "No!" he shouted. "You're not taking me anywhere! Let me go!" But Scott wasn't listening. His hand slammed into Jayden's chest, pushing him harder. The twins felt the weight of the situation. The reality that they were dealing with an officer who was determined to exert power no matter what. And the next moment, the officer's hand slapped Jayden across the face, causing him to stumble back. Jordan gasped in horror, her heart racing. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Her brother, who had always stood up for what was right, was being attacked in front of her. "You're making this harder than it needs to be, kid," Scott spat, his voice laced with venom. The sound of a voice yelling out from behind them startled everyone. It was an older man with a steady stride heading toward the commotion. "Hey, what's going on here?" the man shouted. Officer Scott turned around, his posture stiffening. He hadn't noticed the older man until now, but the tension in the air heightened. The man stood with authority, his hands resting on his hips. He wasn't just another passerby. It was the twins' father, Detective Marcus Williams, the head of the local police unit. "Let go of my son," Marcus said firmly, stepping closer to the scene. His voice carried the weight of his experience as a law enforcement officer, and his presence immediately shifted the dynamics. Scott, his face flushed with anger, turned to Marcus with a dismissive sneer. "This isn't your business, Williams. Step back." But Marcus wasn't backing down. He took another step forward, locking eyes with the officer. His voice was calm, but his words cut like a blade. "That's my son you just slapped. I don't care who you think you are. You're not above the law." The twins stood frozen, their hearts pounding in their chests. They knew their father well. His calm, controlled demeanor had gotten him far in his career. But seeing him face off with a fellow officer, especially one as out of control as Scott, was a different kind of terrifying. "I said step back," Scott repeated, his tone rising with a hint of fear now. "Or I'll arrest you too, Williams." Marcus didn't flinch. Instead, he looked directly at Scott, unfazed. "Do it. I dare you. I'll have you fired before the end of the day." The challenge hung in the air between them, but Scott knew better than to escalate this situation further. His hands tightened into fists at his side. "You'll regret this," he muttered under his breath, but as he backed off, he turned to his car in frustration. The tension lingered, but for the moment, it was over. Marcus turned to his children, his voice softer now. "Are you all right?" he asked, his concern evident. Jayden nodded, though he still couldn't shake the anger that boiled in his chest. Jordan stayed quiet, watching the officer retreat. They had experienced racism before, but this felt different. It wasn't just about one cop. It was about a system that had allowed this officer's behavior to go unchecked. "Let's get home," Marcus said gently, placing a hand on Jayden's shoulder and guiding him toward the car. As they walked away, Marcus couldn't help but feel the weight of what had just happened. His children, his twins, had been humiliated. And the worst part? It wouldn't be the last time. The tension in the air didn't dissipate as Marcus Williams and his children made their way home. Jayden and Jordan remained quiet, still processing the trauma of what had just happened. They had known all their lives that they could face challenges, racism, bias, prejudice, but to have it happen so suddenly, in front of their father, was something else entirely. The harshness of the encounter hadn't just hurt them. It had shaken their belief that they could rely on the very system their father worked within. Marcus was trying to remain calm for his children, but his mind was already racing with plans for what to do next. The incident wouldn't just fade away. It couldn't. This was too serious, too public. Officer Scott's behavior was unacceptable. And as a detective who had spent years working in law enforcement, Marcus knew that sometimes the truth didn't emerge unless you forced it into the light. As soon as they got home, Marcus sat down with Jayden and Jordan. They needed to talk, not just about what had happened, but about the future and the impact this moment would have on their family. "Listen, I know that was hard to watch," Marcus began, his voice steady but firm. "But I'm proud of you both for staying calm. That's the first thing you need to know. Your reaction was the right one. You didn't escalate things. You didn't give him what he wanted." Jayden nodded but didn't say a word. Jordan's eyes were red, still fighting back the tears. "Dad," she finally spoke, her voice breaking. "Why did he do that? We were just walking home. We didn't do anything wrong." Marcus sighed, rubbing his hand over his face. He wished he had a better answer. "It's not you, sweetheart. It's never you. It's the system. It's officers who believe they have the right to treat you differently because of your skin color. They think they can get away with it because they're wearing a badge." "But Dad, you're the chief," Jayden asked, looking at him with a mix of confusion and frustration. "Why didn't you stop him right there?" Marcus looked his son in the eyes. "Because, Jayden, you have to understand. As much as I hate it, I'm part of that system too. I'm supposed to be in charge of making sure this doesn't happen, but that doesn't mean I can always stop it in the moment. It takes more than just stopping one officer. We need change from the inside." The conversation continued long into the night, but despite Marcus's words, Jayden and Jordan felt a weight on their shoulders that was impossible to shake off. They had always trusted their father, but now they saw the complexity of the world he worked in, a world where power and authority weren't always used for good. The next day, Marcus went to work early. He had already made up his mind that Officer Scott couldn't just walk away from this. The power dynamics had shifted the moment he laid a hand on his son. As a father, as a chief of police, Marcus couldn't allow Scott to continue serving on the force. At work, Marcus filed a formal complaint, but he didn't stop there. He pushed for internal affairs to investigate Scott's behavior, knowing full well that his actions would spark backlash. He was ready for it, though. This was bigger than one officer's mistake. This was about accountability. Hours later, the investigation began. Marcus worked tirelessly, gathering evidence, talking to witnesses, and making sure that every angle of the case was covered. The footage from a nearby gas station camera, which had captured the entire altercation, was reviewed and became pivotal to the investigation. As the day wore on, a call came through from Mayor Hayes's office. The mayor's voice was calm but stern. "Chief Williams, I've been informed of the situation with Officer Scott. We're looking into it. However, you need to understand that this kind of action could have ramifications for your department. Do you really want to pursue this?" Marcus didn't hesitate. "Yes, I do. If I don't, then I'm just as guilty as he is." The mayor paused, likely weighing the risk before responding. "I'll make sure everything is handled appropriately, but be prepared for the fallout." By the end of the day, it was clear that Marcus had made the right decision. Officer Scott was placed on administrative leave, and the wheels of justice began turning. Internal Affairs launched a full investigation, which only intensified when the video footage leaked online. The community rallied behind Marcus and his family. This wasn't just about a slap. This was about the systemic abuse of power. A week later, the public hearing was held. The courtroom was full. The news had spread like wildfire, and everyone was eager to see what would happen next. Officer Scott, now stripped of his badge, sat nervously in the defendant's chair. His arrogance had vanished, replaced by guilt and fear. When it was Marcus's turn to speak, he stood before the court, calm and composed. Officer Scott's actions reflect a deeper